Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Zebia Technology and Architecture podcast. I'm your host, Shekhar Gulati, CTO of Zebia Global Services. Zebia is a global IT service organization headquartered in Netherlands. We work with multiple customers on their digital transformation journeys. We work across ecosystem of technologies, be it web or mobile, and we are helping customers transform themselves using those new technologies. Today, I'm joined by Shankar and Sandeep. They worked long back with me in 2010, so we have a long history together. Then they formed their own company called Opstree, and they have doing great in the DevOps ecosystem. They just came with a new product called Build Piper, and today we will be discussing about that product with them. So we'll discuss the genesis of it. We will discuss how they came up with the idea, how they architected that product, and how they are going to take it along. So we will have different questions around that. So welcome, Shankar. Shankar, if you could just introduce quickly about yourself, and then Sandeep. Yeah.
Thanks, Shekhar. Thanks for the introduction. And yes, we work together at Zebia itself.
Yeah.
It's been a long journey since then. Real product architect having a luck of taking multiple production systems to production. And since 2014, we started Solutions as a focused DevOps company, ensuring that we continuously climb the ladder of the DevOps journey and ensure that our customers are extremely benefited because of our extreme value proposition. So that's what we have been doing. And as a result of that, we also ended up doing this product. I will
Right.
hand over to Sandeep.
Okay, thanks, Shankar. Thanks, Shankar, for introducing Opstree and giving us this opportunity to talk about our product. So, as far as about me, I have almost 16 years of experience. I started as a Java J2E engineer, and post that I moved into DevOps field, and it was a gradual transformation. And I can say that the way DevOps has evolved, in a similar fashion, I evolved as a DevOps engineer. So when the DevOps was not there at that point of time, I started doing DevOps. So I've seen the complete journey of DevOps, and I can say that it's a very exciting journey. And one other additional thing that we have done in this additional journey to build this interesting product on which we are going to talk about today.
Great, great. So Shankar, what led you to Build Piper? So what is the journey of Build Piper? If we start there, why you thought it's a problem product that solves some problem? So if we can just talk about that.
Sure, sure. Actually, in mid of 2015, we saw microservices starting to become an important component of scalable architecture. So,
Mhm.
from POC to real implementations, we saw deep desire in businesses to ensure that they adopt microservice architecture.
Mhm.
It so high was the enthusiasm that some of our customers had more microservices than they had developers.
Yeah.
So, and we being largely the DevOps, uh, invariably hit onto a very critical roadblock as to how can they run the system very well without flaw, ensuring that so many small, powerful microservices can integrate and run together. And we
Mhm.
started building that platform for them, and we did it well. But as we started doing it one after another, we found that there was a repeatable pattern, and that pattern was very clear. But we also found that it required huge amount of investment
Mhm.
in terms of time, money, resources, and also it was a recurring investment, not one time. So we
Mhm.
felt it was the right candidate for developing a product which we had companies focusing on developing a product for them to also focus on developing a platform for that product, which will be a microservice platform, would be a huge task to do. And we
Mhm.
felt that we can solve that problem by developing this product, which can do end-to-end management of microservice delivery. So that is the primary inspiration behind doing this product for us.
Okay. So is it at the starting of the journey you will be using it, or you will be using throughout the life cycle of the product? So how will that happen?
So this is actually a complete delivery platform. So
Uh-huh.
starting from once you have Dockerized your services,
Mhm.
post that, I think the complete life cycle of how the system will run,
Mhm.
starting from setting up managed Kubernetes, or let's say I will talk about in a little more detail. But
Mhm.
starting from managing microservices to managing Kubernetes to doing CI/CD pipelines,
Mhm.
security, compliance, observability, everything is taken care. And we
Okay.
are still evolving as a product. So we are trying to bring in a lot of compliance, a lot
Mhm.
of middleware setup. So you can consider this as as a platform which will sort of become a DevOps assistant for companies, very large teams, and showing that everything can be obfuscated behind this platform and only value added work needs to be focused on. So that's the idea behind the product. Yeah.
Okay. Sandeep, you want to add something?
Yeah, so one more thing that we have seen over a period of 5 years, in fact 6 years, Shekhar, in our DevOps consulting and implementing DevOps solutioning for our client, we saw some repeatability best practices, right? And then we thought of that every time, let's say we have to work on a new project or do assignment, you have to do things again and again. So why don't let's have a product that would be implementing all those practices, starting from onboarding a project till you run it in production system, right? As a Shankar that we cover all the aspects, starting from onboarding, CI/CD, observability, security. So that's what we try to put in this product, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and you build a decent stable system.
Got it, got it, got it. So what are the main functionality of the tool? So if you could just talk about main functionalities.
Sure. So see, as we told you, when we started off with this product, the vision was to create a microservice delivery platform, which hides most of the complexities and makes it very easy to go live, manage microservice ecosystem. So with persistent effort of around 2 years, today we have following functionalities in the product. So manage Kubernetes, for example, if you want to onboard existing cloud native, let's say managed Kubernetes, or if you want to set up a Kubernetes from scratch, that is possible via the product. Let's say once you set up the Kubernetes management of ingresses, namespaces, setting up deep observability tools. For example, we have Prometheus Alert Manager, Grafana for infra monitoring, and EFK for log monitoring, setting up Vault, Sonar, Console, Istio. All of this is possible just by click of few buttons, like few clicks on our product. It does not need much. It only needs your understanding about what you want to achieve using this product, setting them up, how to ensure that they are scalable, available, clustered, etc. Everything is done via the product behind the scene. Whereas it also gives you power to take control. Let's say if you're a pro user and you want to do it yourself, you want to define your own manifest Helm files, that is also possible. Then manage microservices, another functionality where you can onboard your microservices in less than a minute or so, and then manage it. Start doing build, deploy, promote, run the system, etc. Everything you need to do with a microservice is achieved via managed microservices. So it's a very easy. Let's say you want to spawn new environments, multiple environments, all of that is possible. Then another interesting feature is CI/CD pipeline. So we have quality checks enabled CI, which is actually standardized at the project level, and gate checks enabled CD if you want to have an approval cycle, etc. And I think the most interesting feature we have is about having REST call for hooks. Let's say if you want to have a mid hook or a pre hook or a post hook, you can use our REST calls, and the pipeline is also invocable through API. So it allows you to mix and match. Let's say you have n number of functionalities which are there, and you want to leverage our product for few of the functionalities which we have. You can use it in parts, or if you want to use it on as a whole, that also is possible. So we do not force you to use the product as a whole or not use it. Functionalities are flexible, and you can use it wherever you feel it is powerful. Although we have put huge focus on everything, and the last part is security, observability, and compliance. So very nice observability features are there, dashboards are there, which allows you to reduce your MTTR, mean time to resolution. So you can very quickly find issues. We have our own recommendation engines, AI-based support. So all of that is also there. So this could summarize the product.
Okay. Sandeep, you talked about that you're trying to productionize your best practices, or prioritize those best practices. So can you name those best practices that you have seen so far? If you can name few of them, what are those best practices that you're trying to prioritize?
So sure, Shekhar. So see, the beauty of Kubernetes, it is very powerful, but then what it does, it hides a lot of stuff, right? And then people straightforward refer from here and there, and they simply implement in Kubernetes. But later, when they run an application, they face a lot of issues. So, for example, typically, if you are already you are a tech geek, right? So you are aware that when you deploy Kubernetes manifest concept of limit, and people typically miss that. Then you have readiness check, liveliness check. There people also miss it. Then when your security is a big concern these days, right? And then people typically forget about adding those security checks, all those things.
Yes, yes,
What
yes.
do you think that what all best practices that can exist in terms of deploying a microservice on a Kubernetes cluster that is already taken care? And when you go to the Build Piper UI, it's a very attractive view, which gives you that clarity, and it tells you that, okay, that's what you have to do, so that you won't miss those things. Similarly, as Shankar already mentioned, if you talk about continuous integration, right? Now, what we have seen over a period of 5 years, that a lot of companies struggles in this thing, that they have multiple teams, and every team have their own notion of implementing CI in their own way. And then as a company, they struggle in terms of creating that standardization. Whereas via this product, what we have done, there is, you define a CI template globally.
Okay.
Once you define that, then you simply have to say that whether I want to have a CI in this project, that's it. And then all those CI check will be implemented automatically for you. You don't have to do it, only a click of a button. So same is the case with observability, monitoring. So all the dashboards that you should have to monitor your micro, they are already included. You don't have to redo all those things. You give a second thought about those.
Okay. For my understanding, a lot of organizations already have some kind of a CI server. So they will have Jenkins or Travis or Circle CI. So how will your CI/CD fit in that picture? So will you work with those CIs, or people will have to use your CI? If you can just help us understand that.
Right. So, Sandeep, you want to?
No, please go ahead.
So basically, as I told you even in the earlier discussion, that our features are actually flexible, and they are like components. You either use them or you don't use them.
Okay.
So for example, let's say if a company already has a very mature CI system, just invoke our pipeline to do just CD. So for example, their CI is done, they invoke an API to trigger our pipeline, it does CD. Or let's say if they have a system which does a part of the CI, for example, they know how to do a, let's say, quality check, but they do not know how to do security check. They can do quality check in their own system, but delegate security checks to us. So for example, container security testing, ZAP security testing, all of that is integrated in the product. Now, people can say, okay, I have checked still code quality and code security, but I don't do container security. You can delegate the container security to us. So it's a very flexible platform, and it allows you to, and generally what we have found is people are liking our CI delivery, and they are adopting the whole thing as such generally when they are moving to the platform. Because one thing which is very unique about our platform is that it's very, very easy to set up a CI. It does not require you to give a single configuration, by the way. You have to go on the UI and say, I want to build these services, let's say 10 services. You can do a macro release setup, for example, set up all microservices if you want, or one microservice pipeline. And then you have to just say, I want to do build for dev, that's all. All data which is required to do configuration is already captured in onboarding process. So it is very intuitive, simple CI setup. So it does not take like more than let's say 3-4 minutes to set up a CI pipeline. So that is the advantage. One more thing I wanted to add regarding standardization. For example, one very good example would be Ingress. So Ingress setup, what we have done is we have divided the Ingress into two parts: protected Ingress and public Ingress. So generally you will have three types of applications, microservices. One would be which is exposed to public through internet. Other would be which is internal, used only for internal users. For example, you have monitoring tools, or let's say you have Kafka queue or a Redis queue database. All of this you want to introduce only to your internal employees, right? Through internal network. Now, or there are some private services which are only introduced within the Kubernetes framework. Now, for protected services, we have created a protected ingress, and we have applied an additional layer of security there. You can say that I want, even if somebody is behind a right IP address and he is against whitelisted IP, even then if he can access the protected URLs only if he is authenticated by his corporate email, let's say Google or Azure or whatever, any other provider. So it makes it multiple security, like MFA is enabled in a way in those scenarios. So this is another example. For example, let's say we are setting up, it's very easy to set up, and it makes it little more easy to ensure that it is secure. So I just wanted to give this example.
So just let's take a developer role. So what I'm trying to understand is, let's say I'm a developer who has built a simple application which has 3 microservices. One, let's assume, is packaging our simple web application, a React application. So we have a Docker image for that. We have 2 Docker images for our 2 backend services. So we only have 3. So how will I run my microservice on the platform that you will build? If we start from the journey of it, so I only have 3 Docker images or 3 instances of my microservice. How will I use your platform for that? If you can just help us understand how will you take it and deploy it and productionize it?
Yeah. Let's assume that the admin part of setting up the cluster, setting up the ingress namespaces, etc., is done. That was done in the organization by the admin already.
Got it. Yeah.
Then if I am a developer who has to onboard my microservice, I will have to go through the steps of telling what is my Git URL, what is the credential to access the Git URL, what are the CPU memory usage I want to give to this pod, which will be generated. What are the variable environment variables? So it is like as if I am answering questions of my own application.
Got it.
And then it is a simple wizard which has around 4 or 5 screens with 5 input fields in every screen, and then at the end of it your service is set up. So which means for 3 services it will be around 10 minutes to set up all these 3 applications. If let's say your infrastructure is behaving well, you do not face any issue. Within 10 to 15 minutes, you'll be live with those services in dev environment.
So will somebody has to build those Docker images, or you can build the Docker images yourself as well? So if I give you a Git repository of an application which is built in Spring Boot, can you automatically build the Docker image as well?
Absolutely, that is how it is.
Okay, cool.
You just give us the path of the Docker file. That's all.
Okay, got it.
So we'll build the Docker image, publish it in a very standard manner, so it is available for you for release package creation.
Okay.
All of that is taken care actually. So yeah, Sandeep, you want to add something?
Yeah, Shekhar, so one of the tagline that we associate with the product is it says that develop and Dockerize. So let's say if you have to use our platform, or let's say if you have to host your microservices, you have to do only as a developer, you have to develop your application and then create a Docker file of that. Post that, everything, whether it is onboarding a microservice, setting up monitoring, creating multiple environments, multiple dev environments, multiple QA, prod, creating CI pipeline, CD pipeline, logging, monitoring, everything will be taken care of by it. And it's more like a business questions that will be asked to a developer. So for example, let's say developer who has developed his microservice. After that, it will be a question like that. Okay, what is the URL where your code resides, right? Where is the location of Docker file? What is the memory quota that you want to give? What is the health check URL? It will be questions like this. And then post that your microservice will be deployed. That's it.
Okay. So a lot of organizations, I think even Microsoft has something where you can, if you are on a Java project, you can specify draft and it will basically automatically figure out that it's a Java project. So you probably need to create a Docker image. So are you also going in that direction where you automatically create a Docker file, or probably you don't even need a Docker file? You just create a Docker image automatically as well. Are you thinking about that as well?
That is in our roadmap. It's not there yet, but we want to reach there definitely.
Okay, got it.
Doing that today. Yes, you are right.
Yeah.
So Shekhar, what we have done, we have started creating the base Docker images of the common patterns. So for example, Spring Boot application. Now we have a Docker image. Now what you have to do, you have to only use that base image as a base image for your application and post that you are done. That base image will ensure that it will build your code in a multi-stage Docker file, and it will create final Docker image as well for you as per industry standards as well. Same is the case. Tomcat and other majorly used technology.
Got it.
So it is already going on there, and soon that will be fit.
Okay, got it. So who are the main users of this product and what value they will derive from it? Shankar or Sandeep, anybody can take it.
Yeah. So the way we envisage this product is actually meant for organizations who are primarily looking at delivering their microservice product very quickly. And the beauty of this product is it allows you to shift left in a very nice controlled manner. So generally what happens when you shift left, there is a concern whether things will happen well, whether there will be issues and all of that. What we have done very nice ACL security permission management in a manner that when you shift left, you do it well, you do it graciously, you give control only that is required. For example, today, the DevOps team keeps swelling because you are delegating a lot of the developer work to the DevOps team because they do not have access to those systems. And if you give
Okay.
access, then you give the access to the whole system, and then there's a risk involved in that, right?
Mhm.
What we are doing is creating a system, a platform where developers can take care of their work by themselves without need of actually mentoring or coaching, because the system has become simple for them to manage it. So as a team, a lot of value gets generated because the development team is enabled by themselves and they can do their work themselves, deliver the quality work output because of their own propensity. Whereas
Mhm.
DevOps team can focus more on delivering value-added responsibilities.
Okay.
Instead
Okay.
of continuously doing build, deploy, promote, etc., they are able to do more value. For example, look into the security scheme of the system, look into the robust availability of the system, etc. And the management gets view of the complete because of dashboards and reporting. They're able to get view of how the system is behaving, what is happening, etc., etc. So it's actually complete enabling platform which enables the complete team as a whole to deliver more than they were doing today. And
Got it.
our calculation says that for a mid-sized team, which people, if they utilize depending upon their current maturity state, they can even end up saving more around $200,000 to $250,000 per month
Oh,
because
nice.
of
Yeah.
this product. So
Okay.
that is the type of benefit it can pass because of the very quick and easy way of working, which is given by this product. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
Uh,
one question that I'm, yeah, sorry, Sandeep, you finish first.
Yeah, just to add here, Shekhar, is that currently the clients which are using our product, they are using it in the same fashion. So
Mhm.
all the dev environments are managed by developer itself.
Okay.
The QA environments are managed by QA environment people only. So it means that they can build their microservices, they can deploy there, they can view the monitoring logging, everything they do it by themselves. And the DevOps team primarily they mainly are involved in onboarding the microservices. Post that,
Okay.
making sure that in fact they create CI/CD pipeline that is integrated with version control system, sort of a GitOps,
Mhm.
and then deployment happens automatically. So as Shankar said that every role is getting those sort of power which they actually need to have, and nobody becomes blocker. So DevOps team never becomes a blocker. Dev team can work on their pace, QA team can work on their pace. Same is the case with DevOps guys. They don't
Okay.
have to do repetitive tasks. Platform is doing that for them.
Got it. Yeah. One thing that I was very curious to know is you started as a service organization and now you are going into a product development. So, as an organization, service organization, what are your lessons that how service organization can approach product development, their own product development? So, if you can share some insights that you have seen in your journey of building a product.
Right. Thanks for asking this question, Shekhar. So basically, we have felt that the first and the foremost thing
Mhm.
when you get on to developing a product is about having a very clear understanding of a problem,
Mhm.
and you should have first hand experience of how to solve that problem.
Mhm.
So if these two things are there, for example, you know what is the problem, clear problem statement is there in front of you, and you know firsthand, you have solved it yourself number of times and knew that this is how it gets solved.
Mhm.
If these two things are there, then the third thing which you need to develop a product is a very, very sincere approach towards building the solution without losing focus anywhere in between. I
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
these three things were a lot in our favor because we knew that there was a clear problem in terms of, for example, if there is a development company which is developing a product which is a microservice architecture, they are already loaded with a lot of work.
Mhm.
Then for them to create another solution which will launch this product is a huge work for themselves.
Mhm.
And that is why they were asking us to do it again and again. And then
Mhm.
we found it's a huge problem to solve, and it is almost like a product candidate. So the
Mhm.
problem and solution was with us. Now
Mhm.
the third thing which required was a clear focus in terms of ensuring that we deliver it in time
Uh-huh.
with focus, and that I think we could do thanks to the overall system and God,
Uh-huh.
and that's how we have been able to deliver it. We
And
carved
how
out.
easy it was to focus? Because I think as you have your own priorities in the service business as well. So how easy it was for you guys to focus?
No,
Because there are always multiple priorities. So like Sandeep will have a priority to run the services thing and you might be trying to drive. So how were you able to work together easily on building the product?
so I would give you, I'll take little more time to answer this
Yeah.
question. So when we started off this company, uh, I always wanted to do a product, and Sandeep told me that you will never have money to do a product.
Okay.
You will, you will. So let's do services, and then we'll do the product. So
Okay.
I think that desire within to create a product was always there.
Okay.
It was there since the beginning. I know
Mhm.
it was difficult, but that is why it took us for 3.5 years for us to start off, because
Okay.
that is when we had some time, money, people
Mhm.
to manage service business. But that desire was very compulsive, and that made us focus more. And probably we got right people along
Mhm.
who were very passionate about the product. That is also one
Okay.
very important factor I want to add.
Okay.
I'll take 1 minute that the product team should not be created out of great individuals.
Mhm.
Great individuals are required, but
Mhm.
product team should be created around passionate individuals.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
Yeah.
passion is more important than brilliance.
Mhm.
So
I
that is
understand.
our experiences, and we found those passionate people who continue to work very hard to
Mhm.
ensure that the product becomes successful. So I don't. We are very early in our journey, but still we
Uh-huh.
feel.
So you took something like an MVP approach as well. So you tried build something, then you tried with that with some customers, or you took the whole 3 years, build it, and then you launched it. How what was the approach you took?
No, I think we took the MVP approach, and as soon as it was ready, we were very lucky to have Original for Sure as our customer.
Okay.
They started using our product in August 2019.
Okay.
So it's been more than a year now they are using our product.
Okay. Okay.
And
Nice.
but but they also have been very kind to us. They have given us a lot of feedback. And then along the way we had more customers. Although we did not go public about it, we have launched our product 15-20 days back only. But
Okay.
we have been asking our customers to use our product, and they have been using it, giving us feedback, and we have also been getting revenue out of it.
Nice, 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 nice. So what are the alternatives in the market for Build Piper? So if we talk about those, so who all will be your competitors?
So I think there are this space is very nascent now, and
Mm-hmm.
lots of very bright people and companies have actually understood that this is a very. So I read a blog which was saying that Kubernetes is Java of infrastructure, by the way. So it is going to change the way people work, and it's going to stay here for some time. And a lot of people
Yeah.
realize that, and they have been trying to solve this problem in different ways. For
Mm-hmm.
example, there's a product called Harness which used to do CD alone. Now they have acquired a CI company, and they are doing CI/CD for microservices. There's
Mm-hmm.
another company called CodeFresh.io,
Mm-hmm.
which was doing only CI/CD. Now they are also going into managed Kubernetes space.
Mm-hmm.
So they are solving bits of the problem, and they are covering the other space also. They are even going to the non-containerized world and the containerized world. Whereas we are focused purely on the containerized applications, and we are solving the complete gambit, starting from uh, managed Kubernetes to observability. So the whole
Okay.
flow is there. OpenShift started very early, probably
Mhm.
even before anybody. As soon as the Kubernetes was there, I would believe
Yeah, yeah.
OpenShift started. And they started with managed Kubernetes, but now they have also developed systems which are able developer friendly. So we align ourselves more closely with that. Although we did not start off creating OpenShift, I think that would be a huge tall statement to make. But we feel that our customers are saying that it's very close to OpenShift. So that's how.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Got it. What would be the key differences between the two if we compare OpenShift with Build Piper? What were the key differences in your way, in your opinion?
Absolutely. So see, uh, OpenShift when it started, probably they were doing great job at that time, but they were actually focused on making Kubernetes very simple. So for them, developer flow is an afterthought.
Okay.
Whereas for us, managed Kubernetes is a part of ensuring that developers can do it well. So our whole flow is actually developer, or let's say DevOps friendly, rather than being tool friendly. So we are not trying to simplify a complex tool. We're trying to simplify the complete microservice management process. So our approach, if you look at our product, it's very easy to manage it, and it's very simple. For
Okay.
let's say if you want to get into depth, then you get into depth. Otherwise, it's very simple. Whereas OpenShift is a slightly different way of doing. I will not say they are doing great job. It's a very great product used by very large enterprises, but it is a difference in approach. Probably it's because of the
Okay.
time when they created the product and when we are creating the product.
Okay. So how do you consider developer experience into the whole picture? So do you talk to the developers directly, get their feedback? So how are you ensuring that the developer experience that you have is basically what developers need? So how is the feedback from developers coming into your
This is
system?
actually very exciting. So I can give you an anecdote. So we were setting up our product, and while we were setting up the product, a developer was called, lead was called to look into some problem we were facing. And once the problem was solved, Sandeep said, "Now you can leave." He said, "No, no, I'm interested. I'm seeing this very exciting. I want to see what is happening here."
Nice,
So,
nice.
so basically, developers have never been enabled in the way in which they are getting enabled now, because everybody today does not want to remain like aloof of the deployment ecosystem. Even developers want to know what is
True,
happening.
Amit. Yeah, yeah,
So this product makes them brings them very close to doing their own deployments by themselves. Actually,
yeah.
they can do their deployment by themselves. They can do their setup by themselves. So it
Mhm.
makes them very excited, because it does not require them to learn Kubernetes, but they can set up their service very well without
Okay.
with security checks, with quality checks. So it makes them feel very fascinated about it. So we have found them actually developers adopting our system very fast. So
Okay.
that is
Nice,
one
nice.
thing that is very good. Sandeep,
Yeah.
you agree, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I, 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 I just remember the conversation that I had with that developer.
Yeah,
Nice.
right, right.
Yeah. So what is the technology architecture of Build Piper? So if you can talk about the technology that makes Build Piper.
Yeah, I will go to some initial bit, then I'll delegate to Sandeep. He is our technology CN. So yeah, so we wanted to ensure that the system is really scalable and it's very easy to manage, and that is why we chose React as our front end UI. Our UI, we put huge focus on our UI.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
try to make it as easy to use, simple to manage, etc. And there we have taken a lot of. We feel we want to thank React. It's been made us very easy for us. For example, the pipeline canvas which we have built,
Mhm.
which is built over the Atlassian library of React, uh,
Oh,
which is from Trello actually. So it's very
mhm.
very nice. It's very
Nice.
easy to use. Yeah. Similarly, we have used Django behind the scene, and Celery,
Okay.
Docker, and a
Mhm.
lot of other tools are there. Sandeep, maybe we can take it in more detail. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Shekhar, as rightly said by Shankar, see, one thing is that we were building this product as a microservice management platform, right? So
Mhm.
then it was a no-brainer that the solution that we will use, it should be a
Yeah,
microservice, so
yeah,
that we can have desired level of scalability, right? It can scale up to the needs and requirements.
yeah,
So
yeah.
currently we have a set of 12 different microservices
Uh-huh.
that combined have this application. So front end, back end, middleware, and all those stuff. And as Shankar said that another major thing, design decision that we made, that things should be asynchronous by nature, right? So for
Okay.
example, uh, typically when people build this CI/CD solution, they use some tool, Jenkins or something like that. We wanted to have full control on top of that. And one of the prime thing that was needed to be done is that the CI processes steps, the CI steps that happen, that should happen in synchronous fashion. So we wanted to have used a queuing mechanism,
Mhm,
right
mhm.
there. So a combination of Redis and Celery was being used. That
Okay.
gives flexibility that uh, multiple pipelines together. So for example, one of our clients has a 20 microservice, or
Uh-huh.
in 20 microservices,
Uh-huh.
what they have done, they have created one single CI pipeline, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Which basically builds all those projects together. Now it is
Mhm.
up to their configuration whether they want to have a parallel build process of 5 microservices together, or 10, or maybe 3. So depending on what is their infrastructure capability, on the basis of that, or what is the speed they want to have, they can have that completely configurable.
Got it. Got it. Any reason you choose Python for this product? So just for my curiosity, why Python? Why not Java? Being a
Yeah,
Java guy,
actually,
but
that's a very interesting question. I have struggled a lot with this question because my whole life as a developer, Shekhar, we have worked together, has been as a
yes,
Java architect.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was thinking, why Python? So because I had to learn Python and React both, by the way.
True, true, true.
So uh, actually, the advantage of DevOps ecosystem is everybody knows Python very well.
I
So
agree.
we wanted to have DevOps engineers work as developers for us, because then it becomes very easy to create systems which are DevOps friendly, so
Mhm.
because it is a DevOps product. And that is why instead of teaching them Java, I thought I will learn Python. So
That
that
makes
is
sense.
why. we chose Python, and it has come out to be very helpful for us because there has been so much in the open ecosystem which is available, which could be utilized. Yeah.
True. Do you also have a plugin based architecture as well, or you are relying on webhooks for the integration? So do you have plugin based mechanism?
We, yeah, sorry, please go ahead.
Yes, Shikhar, we have an interesting concept of Power Apps.
Okay.
So,
And what does that mean? If you can just help me.
yeah, sure, I'll tell you. So what we have done is that we have created some small microservices in the form of Power Apps.
Uh-huh.
And what happens that you can have so for example, right now we have 3 Power Apps. One Power App is which audits your Kubernetes cluster.
Okay.
And it scans your Kubernetes cluster and gives you detail that, okay, whether you have some vulnerability in Kubernetes ecosystem or not.
Okay.
Another Power App that we have is Kubernetes Resource Manager. So what it does, it continuously scans your Kubernetes infrastructure, pods, all those things, and then it gives you data that, okay, what is the resource that you have allocated to your pod? Are they underutilized or overutilized? And then via Kibana dashboard, you get a visibility that, okay, these are the pods which are not utilized or underutilized, overutilized, right? Those are. Similarly, another Power App, which is again a plugin, is which basically gets into your AWS infrastructure and generate AWS billing insights for you.
Okay. Okay. Can other developer also create their Power Apps as well? Okay. Anybody.
Yes.
So you have an open API that people can abide to. Is that the way it will happen?
Yeah. The only thing is that it is for our internal usage purposes at present moment.
Okay.
We are considering that if we want to open source that, but yes, it's a complete framework in itself. So the only thing that end user have to do is create their own REST API and post that will integrate with it and can have the complete scanning and visualization.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this question is that let's take a very simple example of a typical enterprise. They have their own authentication and authorization system. So how will you plug your system into that? Because as I understand, right now it's your enterprise system. So somebody will be deploying in their data center or in their cloud build piper. So how will it integrate with their authentication and authorization system?
Right. So that we have already created actually. So for example, if you look at our playground, that is app.buildpiper.io. There we have already integrated with LinkedIn, with GitHub, Bitbucket, and all of that, Google. So open auth implementation is already done, and SSO based authentication is possible.
Okay, like custom LDAP or some Microsoft Azure, you probably will be able to do that.
Everything is possible. But that set aside, I think the bigger question is how do we integrate within a larger enterprise, right? So I think that answer is very easy for us because we are just working as an assistant to set up your system. So I think once our system is set up, it is in your own realm. So everything that is possible within the realm is possible with the product also.
Okay.
That is the beauty of this product. This product does not get into creating anything outside of your ecosystem. For example, if you look at Harness or CodeFresh, they are building the system in their own, let's say, SaaS offering, right? But the beauty of our product is it is in-premise, sitting in your system and setting up your system in your own cluster. So once it is there, if you let's say make changes in your cluster, we start understanding that you have made changes and update our UI. So it is almost like a synchronous symbiotic relationship between your and our ecosystem. It is actually your own system as a whole.
I think for a big enterprise, I think the other value add will be that you will be getting the full visibility of all your Kubernetes cluster, because that's also a lot of trouble. So you will get a single pane of glass from which you can look at the whole infra of the organization as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good. And do you have all those, like, do you have the concept of different business unit work groups? Can you create different spaces and create different clusters for those workspaces as well? Like in an organization, there will be multiple business units. And if all those business units want to create their cluster, manage it separately, so you have that kind of a way where.
Yes. So what we have done is we have done it slightly differently.
Okay.
We have done, what we say is we have brought it a little low, actually slightly low at a modularity level. What we are saying is the admin will create clusters. And when he creates a project, an application, he will assign infra to that project or an application. So let's say if I have a card service or a search service, they are separate teams. For example, let's say they have a group of microservices to do a card or a group of microservices to do a search. Then that team, a project, let's say search project gets created. you assign an admin to that project, and so also assign an infra. And then you can start having reports of as to which project is consuming how much infra, whether they are underutilizing it, overutilizing it. That is one thing. Other thing is, if you move a person from a project to other project, his access from infra of this project gets automatically revoked.
Okay,
And
got it.
a new infra gets automatically assigned basis the roles he has, not that he'll have complete control. So then what happens is that extra responsibility of reassigning infra, etc., is also gone. You are actually, once you move from one person from a project to other project, that infra control is also automatically assigned to him.
And have you also tackled the problem related to the costing aspect as well? Like, if I want that my cost of the cluster should remain under $200 or $500, can I set those limits as well right now or not?
Right now, we have, instead of controlling, we are giving you visibility.
Okay.
Later, about getting little more proactive actions. But as of now, as Sandeep told you, we have a Power App which gives you complete visibility into cluster utilization, cluster cost, and whether you are underutilizing or overutilizing your cluster assets.
Okay, got
But
it. Got it.
we may start moving into managing cost also later as a proactive step.
Okay.
But, yes, just to add there, Shekhar, cost is always our concern. So, for example, in AWS, we have ensured that we have integration with Spot in place, right? And for most of our customers, their non-prod setup is running primarily on Spot.
Okay. So you basically make sure that the instances are Spot instances, and that makes sense.
Not only that, Shekhar, we have also ensured that whenever a Spot instance starts getting unavailable, a Lambda triggers and automatically provisions an on-demand. And when the on-demand Spot is available again, the on-demand is removed and Spot is again put back. So that is a advantage of taking advantage of the real situation. So
yeah, and that really helps in the cost reduction as well.
Right.
Cool. So who are the early adopters of your product right now? So who all are adopting your product? If you can just talk about the customers that are using your product.
Absolutely. So first of all, we want to thank Original for sure. They have been our first customer of the product, and it was quite early in our journey, and they have been using our product for more than a year now. Then we have, so for us is actually a customer which is working with large players like ITC and Honeywell, etc., and they are into counterfeit management. So their whole product is launched on our platform, and then they are able to ensure that they have more than 50 plus microservices, and they have been using our product for more than 1 year without any issues. They are quite comfortable. But then few more customers joined us in the journey. SimSim is another customer, which is a vernacular e-commerce company. A very large, I think more millions using the system, and they are also migrating from Lambda based architecture to microservice architecture. And around 6 months back or so, they adopted our product, and they have launched their microservice product on our platform only. And they have also been very happy. We moved from POC to commercial stage, and now they are continuing with us for a long time. PZ Mall is a Z business initiative. There also our product is being deployed, and we are in a POC stage there. And then there is a company called Adda 247. They are also evaluating our products. So we have verbal from them.
Nice.
So these are some customers which have adopted our product. But there are many other customers which are very large enterprises, a very large banking company in India, a very large e-commerce company in Dubai, and a very large airline aggregator in US. These companies are also doing POC, and we hope that they will succeed will succeed our POC, and they will take our product for a long time.
What is the typical POC lifetime? So how much time people take in the POC?
We are giving 1 month free trial.
Okay.
Because to set up the product and make systems running, it takes less than a day or two. So post that is 1 month is what people generally take, and post that they take a decision.
Makes sense. So where do you think is the future of BuildPiper? So what all features you are expected to build in next few months? So have you thought about your future roadmap? If you can share.
Yeah, we have a very robust roadmap in terms of what we plan to do. So while we were building the product for a lot of large enterprises and small, medium-sized startups, etc., a very interesting use case popped up, by the way, Shekhar. I just want to share. So some very big data center companies wanted to use our product admin part of the product
Okay.
to launch their Kubernetes for their own customers.
Okay.
So managed Kubernetes of the data centers. So we are talking to quite a few data center companies, and for them we revamped our complete admin portal.
Okay.
Our admin portal now looks amazing. It has almost features all 100% mapping with OpenShift features, and we are about to release that product feature by end of this month.
Okay.
And mid of this month, not even end of this month. So that is one new milestone which we'll be achieving. So very robust. You can see what is the cluster status, cluster dashboards, then nodes, pods, details of node pod, the add namespace, add ingress, through manifest, through UI, all of that. A lot of features are there that we have built. Then we are also working on AI-based canary deployment methodology. So, for example, you can do a baseline versus canary assessment and then release 10% of your workload on canary and see whether the and canary are comparable, and then decide to roll further. Let's say 50% and 100%, something like that. So that is a very important feature which people are asking for. So we want to develop that feature. Canary, there is a Kyanta tool already available by Google, which is integrated in Spinnaker, by the way, but it's not open source. We cannot use it in our product, so we have developed our own canary assessment AI tool. So that is going to be utilized. Then we also want to have a deployment analytics tool. So what happens is when I do my deployment post that, let's say for 1 hour or 2 hours, I want to just do analytics. So let's say for forever, I want to do analytics. So see whether my deployment is behaving better than the previous release or not. Whether my number of log lines, number of CPU usage, memory usage is behaving as per pattern, time series bit or not. That analysis with proper reporting and let's say recommendation. That is one thing which we want to build as a very important part of the functionality.
Okay.
Then one thing which is slightly incomplete in our approach, we are doing CI/CD very well, but release packaging as a functionality is not so robust. It is there in a way, but it is not visibly available for people to be referenced. So tools like Octopus or those tools generally have a lot of very good release management. You can refer back to the release features, refer back to the release version, etc. And if you want to roll back, you can roll back, etc. So that is another feature which we plan to build very soon. But there are many such exciting features which are coming up.
One thing that I forgot to ask you is there are times when microservices have dependencies. So A service might have a dependency on B service. So are you able to resolve those dependencies and make your deployment in accordance with that graph of dependency as well right now?
Not now, not as of now, but generally we believe that the microservices still should, as you know, both of us will agree that they should survive by themselves.
But typically that doesn't happen. So
that does not happen. But we want to do it slightly more than that actually. So we want to have a methodology by which this is actually a requirement from where this product development started actually. So there was a company, I cannot name it, one of the largest and biggest company in NCR, which is very famous. We were talking to them and they had a problem. The problem was that let's say if I am a developer and I am doing my microservice development and I want to test my microservice, I cannot test it because all other environments are not stable. So let's say that everybody is developing their own microservice. So how do I go and create an environment and refer to the stable versions of those microservices and then test my microservice? So we want to achieve that. I think we want to achieve that. I should be able to, let's say, refer to stable versions of, I should have a map of my dependent microservices and say that these 4 microservices I want to do fresh deployment and remaining I want to refer to the stable version of the deployments.
Okay.
That so you still that huge contribution, by the way. So that is something which we want to build very soon. So
nice. And that will really solve a lot of trouble actually, because that's what happens in most of the enterprises. Like you don't know the order in which you have to deploy to ensure that everything works fine. Cool. I think just to conclude it. So I think we didn't talk about the pricing of it. So right now, as I understand, enterprise solution. So are you planning for any SaaS solution as well? And what was the pricing of the enterprise right now?
We felt that to do this, to set up this product, it requires a lot of access because this product is like as if it is your DevOps engineer. So senior or lead or let's say architect DevOps engineer for you. So it requires a lot of access into systems. So we started off envisaging it more like a more like a in-premise solution.
Okay.
But what we are now planning is we want to trim down the functionalities to a level, and then we even make it SaaS. For
Okay.
example, creating cluster will not be available in SaaS because creating a cluster in an AWS system requires way more access. Whereas if I want to onboard a cluster and just interact with it, it requires less access. So some bit we will reduce and have a SaaS solution. But
Okay.
as of now, for some time, it will be an in-premise only solution with a playground where people can come and play with it on our UI, which is app.buildpiper.io. So the pricing is very simple. What we have tried to do is we have tried to ensure that people who are very small, they can also use our product, and people who are large enough can discuss with us and still use our product. So our pricing is number of pods in production into $25. That's all.
Okay.
So plus some user license fee. That's all. So let's say if you are having only one microservice and 2 pods, nobody will have one microservice. Just an example. Then you will just end up paying $50 per month. That's all.
Got it. Got it.
But you will get the complete functionality of the product as it is available for you to be utilized. So that's the.
So how can people play with it? So if somebody has to give it a try, how can they use it?
We have launched the user portal where whenever you log in and register yourself, you get access to 2 namespaces, 2 GB of memory and 2 core of CPU.
Okay.
And you can at best play with our tool and definitely get complete understanding. Even developers have a very good opportunity who can come and learn development learn Kubernetes. This is a ready Kubernetes where you can play with it. So
And that is a 1 month, or that people can play for lifetime? So it's a
we have not put limitations of now.
Okay.
We would want to put it to around 20 days or maybe 1 month.
Okay.
But as of now, people can come and play with it. There's no control. That's a complete
Great. Sandeep, anything that you want to add before we conclude?
No. Yeah.
Great. So I think we had a great time discussing our BuildPiper. So I will definitely give it a try and give you guys more feedback if I have any. But thanks a lot for your time, Shankar and Sandeep. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Shekhar.